not the time for politicians to exploit fears and to pit people one against the other. As you all know, the Conservative Party picked a new leader over the weekend. I want to congratulate Mr. Poilievre for becoming the leader of His Majesty's loyal opposition. And we've been making every effort to work with all parliamentarians, and we will continue to do so. But this doesn't mean that we're not going to be calling out highly questionable, reckless economic ideas. What Canadians need is responsible leadership. Buzzwords, dog whistles, and careless attacks don't add up to a plan for Canadians. Attacking the institutions that make our society fair, safe, and free is not responsible leadership. Telling people they can opt out of inflation by investing their savings in volatile cryptocurrencies is not responsible leadership. By the way, anyone who followed that advice would have seen their life savings destroyed. Fighting against vaccines that saved millions of lives, that's not responsible leadership. Opposing the support and investments that have helped save jobs, businesses, and families during the pandemic, that's not responsible leadership.
Well, you can see that was much more scripted than Melanie Joly's rehash of, I guess it was the only thing that came to mind, hope and hard work. You know, she's been repeating that mantra since 2015, so it's no surprise. This was obviously carefully scripted. And, you know, you can see the argument. You can see the ads right now. Pierre Poilievre said we should invest in Bitcoin. If you did that, you would have, like they're picking things, you know, not responsible leadership. He's reading it in that dramatic actor voice of his. There's a lot of gaslighting in there, though, Spencer. I mean, when he says, hey, we can't exploit fears to pit people against each other. Aren't you the prime minister who said there's no room for vaccinated people and unvaxxed people in our country? And should we even tolerate those people? And you're not allowed on a train. You can't sit next to me because you've got cooties. Like it's a bit of chutzpah for this guy to say, don't exploit fears and pit people against each other. But he thinks that people will forget. He thinks people will forget. Maybe he's right.
Yeah, I think that's the confidence of somebody who knows that he's managed to get much of the establishment media to be co-opted by government funding and dependence on the state. And he also knows that for a long time, a lot of media institutions have increasingly been, you could say, infiltrated or whatever you want to call it, by radical far-left activists. So he knows that much of the current media structure is on his side. And he also knows that he's currently using government power with, you know, legislation like Bill C-11 to try to, you know, shut down independent media, to narrow the bounds of communication in the country, to control social media, control what people can say. So I think that's why he feels that he can get away with so much of the gaslighting and the dishonest rhetoric. He thinks that he's got a big structure there to support him, and it's true, he does. So he will, you know, feel he can get away with it. But the other problem is that if you look at the results of the Conservative leadership race, not just Poilievre's victory, but how many memberships he sold, how much money he raised, how much bigger the Conservative Party is now than it was before the leadership race, it tells you there's a real groundswell of public opinion and energy that is opposing him. And that's, you know, he took advantage of that in 2015 when people were tired of their previous government, and now he's seeing that same dynamic that's now working against him. So, you know, he's obviously going to run a negative campaign. I think it's going to be the most negative campaign we've seen in Canadian politics, you know, possibly in the history of the country. You know, look at how angry people are already. The Liberals are going to try to make people more angry to try to hold on to power. So that's the direction he's going to go in. I think Canadians are well aware of that. And they can say all they want about being about hope and hard work, but the next campaign is going to look quite a lot different than that.
You know, I'm thinking about that cryptocurrency thing. I mean, cryptocurrencies, they go up, they go down. I don't think Pierre Poilievre was giving personal financial advice to anybody. He was talking about cryptocurrencies as a possible new way of doing commerce, a new industry. And I think he was talking about it as an alternative to government-controlled currency that can be inflated by the government. The fact that cryptocurrencies have dipped down is, you know, bad for those who have invested in them, I suppose. But it's if that's the thing they're that they're hanging on to. There's no, I mean, that's a comment. That's a niche issue. That's a curiosity. It's not a central issue. It was always a throwaway line, and it was his way of Poilievre's way of being sort of new and modern compared to Trudeau, and it was an answer to the Bank of Canada. But if that was the most interesting and the most colorful criticism that Trudeau had of him, and I think that says something. I think that says they don't have, like, they didn't call him racist there. They didn't call him sexist. They didn't call him homophobic. They didn't talk about abortion. Maybe they're saving those things for later. But it feels like they're really stretching if they're saying, he expressed interest in cryptocurrencies, and boy, I hope he didn't invest in it. If that's what they got on the guy, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure their war room is digging up everything terrible they can on Pierre Poilievre, but the first draft doesn't look as scary as maybe it ought to. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting to look at the parallels between different political parties and campaigns, even when they're, on different sides of the political spectrum, but to look at the broader situation they're in. And, there are, some of when you see, kind of, as you say, the petty and kind of nitpicking attacks on Poilievre, it does remind you a bit of how the Conservatives were trying to attack Justin Trudeau in 2015. When a government is kind of out of energy, when people are looking for a change, you do see kind of the petty, nice hair though, right? I mean, okay, that didn't really work out too well for them. So when you see that they have to find very kind of niche and obscure things to go after somebody for, it starts to tell you that they know they're in trouble. And I think, the thing we're also not talking about too is, where's the NDP in all of this, right? I mean, they're the supposedly working class party, and they're just, Poilievre is just eating their lunch right now. Mm-hmm. And so it's very interesting to see what the dynamic there will be, because Trudeau is, at some point, the Liberals will inevitably start to say to NDP voters, oh, Poilievre is so dangerous, you can't risk voting NDP. And what does Jagmeet Singh do in that situation? Does he just say, oh, the Liberals are just as bad? He's been unwilling to really say that. Can he even say the Liberals are bad? He's been propping them up all this time. So I think, if you're the NDP, you're looking at what's going to happen after this next election. Do we really see the country become fully polarized between the left and the right, where you have the Conservatives taking a principled conservative stand and the Liberals basically wiping out the NDP and trying to get all the NDP voters to vote for them? I think it's going to be a very interesting dynamic to look at going forward. And I think, the Conservatives will have to look at, how do they appeal to working class voters? How do they get NDP votes? Because I think those votes are going to be very much up for grabs.
What you just saw was an excerpt from my nightly show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every weekday, I do a monologue. Usually it's about half an hour. Then I interview an interesting guest, and then we read my hate mail or my fan mail, whichever is more fun. It's only available behind a paywall, though. That's how we pay our bills here at Rebel News. We don't take a dime from Justin Trudeau. But the good news is it's only $8 a month, about half the price of Netflix. And in addition to my nightly show, you also get weekly shows from 4 other friends here at Rebel News. So you're getting 36 shows a month just for $8. I think it's worth it. And even if you're not quite sure, do it anyways, because we rely on viewers like you to keep us free and independent. I promise you I'll never take a dime from Trudeau. Just go to rebelnewsplus.com and click subscribe. Thanks.